What makes Hulk the strongest he is? And is this just a catchphrase, or should we interpret this saying more literally? Hulk is so powerful that he could literally punch a world into dust. We've actually seen this happen more than once with Hulk, but it's also been alluded to and suggested as well on Earth. When Hulks fight each other, the world is riddled with seismic activity, proving how devastating their blows can truly be to the people around them, and even the planet they happen to be fighting on. At one point when Thor and Hulk were fighting, they were moved to another world and place by Valkyrie, made for epic gladiatorial combat, so that they could fight safely without Thor having to worry about, causing massive amounts of damage to the people or the places around them. Hulks fighting Hulks is dangerous, and we've even seen planets basically fully transformed as a result of massive Hulk fights. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to let us know you love us by clicking that like button. And if you like the Hulk, who doesn't like the Hulk? Smash the like button. That's what the Hulk would say. Number 9. Untouchable. Well, I should say Bruce Banner is untouchable, although I feel like also this would be by extension the Hulk as well, as long as Bruce can sense he's in danger. If he has time to react, this makes him virtually unharmable, because as soon as his body gets stressed, the Hulk appears in his place. And the Hulk is a lot more durable than Bruce. Now, of course, just because this is a power of his doesn't mean that there aren't always ways around it, because we definitely have seen Bruce harmed before. If Bruce was left completely unaware or was able to control his transformations, you could probably harm him, but otherwise the Hulk pretty much sees to it that no harm comes to his other form of Bruce Banner by default, which is a pretty cool superpower to have. At any time you're in danger, instead of having to deal with, said danger or being harmed, you just transform into basically a big green fighting machine. Although I don't know, I feel like I wouldn't want to worry about the damage. I guess that's the thing that Bruce has to live with all the time. He's like, I just transformed into the Hulk, oh boy, what am I coming back to? Eesh. Number 8. Powerful lungs. Hulk is a powerful dude, and of course with all the power that he bolsters, in addition to his sheer size, he's basically like a brick house. Hulk also has insanely powerful lungs. We've seen him stagger people in the past simply by exhaling, but his inhales are also pretty powerful too. At one point he used his massive lung size to inhale a bunch of toxic gas that was surrounding people in order to protect them. Unfortunately, while he was successful in saving them from the gas, it kind of cost him his form as Hulk, because he became so weakened by the gas, which was also kind of killing him, that he transformed back into Bruce Banner and ends up collapsing. We don't typically get to see the Hulk using his lungs so effectively in the comics, but it's pretty cool to think that this is a power that Hulk could just use at any time. It's also been implied that he can hold his breath for longer because of his increased lung capacity. Now, this was suggested in the crossover comic between Hulk and Batman, so it kind of exists in a not necessarily just a 616 reality, and it is a deduction of Batman's. It's not like confirmed. Although, I gotta say, I think it's a weird even suggestion, because I don't think that's necessarily how lungs work. The bigger they are, the longer you can hold your breath. I'm not so sure about that. Maybe in comics that's how lungs work. Number 7. Building portals. Many people don't think of the Hulk as a supremely intelligent being, but then they forget that technically this hero is made up of different personas. One is Doc Green. Doc Green himself is known for being one of the more intelligent Hulk personas, and he even at one point was able to portal around, effectively teleporting. He made these portals using science, of course, not magic or anything like that, although a magical Hulk would actually be super interesting and super cool. And granted, these portals weren't, quite so quick to summon or create as, let's say, someone like Magic or Nightcrawler. Well, Hulk could summon them pretty quickly, but couldn't really close them as fast. This Hulk isn't a teleporter in terms of combat use, but Doc Green's portals don't necessarily make him a teleporter in terms of, their ability to be used in combat, but still, using portals to take you to other places or even other worlds, I think that's pretty impressive. And not something many of us think of when we think Hulk. We don't usually think portals. Number 6. Tunnel powers. I love this one. Hulk, oddly enough, can actually dig a tunnel like a superpowered mole or worm. He's basically like a drill underground. It's crazy. He can tunnel underground at an alarming rate simply by pushing down into the ground. It seems like his sheer strength and force allows him to burrow easily and speed through the dirt and rock, even blasting out of the ground and into the air to surprise his enemies. Honestly, if the Hulk just busted out of the ground, I would be very shocked. If that happened right now, I'd be like, whoa, where'd you come from? Never mind sandworms. Apparently, in the Marvel Universe, we have found our own equally deadly version in the Hulk. Although this doesn't come up as much in modern comics, it has happened in the past before, and I personally think we should bring these epic tunnel powers back for Hulk. Also, if you do bring these powers back, then please send him over to Toronto. That would be helpful. We need a few more lines on our subway system, and having the Hulk here to help out would probably speed up and help reduce the cost of that project. So yeah, send him this way. Number 5. Plant instincts. Not sure if this comes from Bruce Banner or the Hulk himself, but Savage Hulk once displayed the instinctual knowledge of the healing property of plants. Like, just instinctually. When someone near him became injured, not only was he simply able to tell that her wound had become infected, but he was also able to sense which herbs might actually be used as medicine to help her by drawing the poison out of her body and her wound, binding her wound with them. I know a lot of people think of Savage Hulk as being, one of the least intelligent personas Hulk has, but I gotta say, this actually makes me feel kinda otherwise about him. I mean, I can't just instinctually tell what the properties of plants are, can you? I know some, but that's cause I learned it from reading in books. I guess while Savage Hulk might not be as big into books, it's perhaps his strong intuition and maybe a more raw connection with the nature around him that grants him this ability. Number 4. Power over Celestials. Back in the 90s, when Hulk was considered a Nexus being, Apocalypse surmised that Hulk could actually generate enough energy to even be able to control and rule over the Celestials themselves. Now for those unfamiliar, the Celestials are god-like gigantic alien beings from space who had a hand in the evolution of man, creating both the races of the Deviants and the Eternals as well. They usually travel across the cosmos, manipulating planets and experimenting on their inhabitants to create their own races of beings. They also have extremely advanced technology, which Apocalypse has used to augment himself and others. And it was while using this tech that he noticed the potential power Hulk could hold. He hoped to harness this energy for himself so that he might use it to bend the Celestials to his will upon their return to Earth. Number 3. Truly the strongest. While many know the Hulk is the strongest there is, I don't think everyone fully understands the scope of what that means. Hulk isn't just the strongest there is among other heroes or on planet Earth. He's believed literally to be the strongest humanoid being, with his maximum strength levels existing far beyond all others, and is also known as the most powerful mortal entity to have ever existed. So when he says Hulk is the strongest there is, this isn't just a fun catchphrase. He really does mean that, and it should be taken seriously, because when we're talking maximum strength levels, there's really no one else above, at least not in regards to his form. Like maybe something that is less tangible than Hulk would be at a greater power level, or something or someone based in mystic or cosmic realms of Marvel, but that's really about it, I'd say. Hulk is one of the strongest beings like in the multiverse. So number 2, stronger than even himself? If you think Hulk being one of the strongest beings in the multiverse according to Doctor Strange is wild, wait till you hear about this one. Hulk is also stronger than himself. Apparently. When the leader attempts to beat the Hulk by kind of using his own strength against him, Hulk surprises him by miraculously beating him still. This apparently happens because Hulk's strength really has no limits, and he gets even more angry, which of course makes him even more powerful, allowing him to best even his own power when he goes up against it. Beating everyone else in the Marvel Universe pretty much is one thing, but then also managing to best yourself on top of that, that's quite another accomplishment, I think, when you're someone as strong as the Hulk is. Number 1, overload vibranium. Some may already know about how Hulk can basically bust through adamantium, but what about vibranium? Well, as I said before, when we talk about Hulk, we're not just talking about the big green giant and Bruce Banner. There are multiple Hulk personas that reside within him, one of them being Devil Hulk. Devil Hulk has been shown to be vastly stronger than some of the other personas and can even overload vibranium, it appears. We see him in a fight against the Avengers in Immortal Hulk issue number 7, and he really just kind of tanks them all. Black Panther with all of his vibranium included. I definitely would never want to meet Devil Hulk. That guy's crazy. He's all too eager to embrace the nickname given to him when Thor calls him a devil, and Thor also says in terms of the power he's close to God tier. I wonder if this version of Hulk could also destroy Uru. Number 10, Eternally Young. A lot of people think of Black Widow Natasha Romanova, or Romanoff, as most people know her thanks to her appearance in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where she's played by Scarlett Johansson, as just an average human. Well, not average, a human who just so happens to be one of the best spies in the entire world. I mean, I wouldn't call that average, would you? But while she is mortal and human, that doesn't mean she's the same as you or I. She may not have outright superpowers, but over the years her origin story and even her identity somewhat has changed. One of the things we'd come to notice about Natasha is that she is eternally young. But unlike someone like Spider-Man, who is pretty much eternally young in his 20s or 30s, just without any need for an explanation, as everyone around him also maintains their same age, and May, I'm looking at you, Natasha actually has a reason for this. She was genetically modified and as a result doesn't really age the same as most people, instead maintaining an eternally youthful appearance, remaining in peak physical condition for as long as she is still alive. Number 9. Her belt. Black Widow's belt isn't just a stylistic choice, it is actually something she uses in combat. The belt is often said to be made of or filled with explosives. I gotta be honest though, wearing a belt made of plastic explosives seems like it would be, well, both useful and kinda dangerous, especially if you end up getting caught in an explosion yourself. Then you're surrounded by explosives. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like. Number 8. Russian Super Soldier. Those advancements we were talking about that keep her eternally young, that's not all she got with them. One of the things we'd come to learn about Natasha's origin is that she was actually experimented on when she was very young, coming under the care of the Red Room when she was but an infant. As such, she grew up being exposed to their version of the Super Soldier Serum. This increased her lifespan and also improved her immune system. It also is what allows Natasha to be so strong and resilient. Number 7. Wall crawling. Did you know Black Widow can wall crawl like Spider-Man? Which also I think makes some sense since we call her Black Widow, a little bit. Well, that's true. Although this one is not a superpower, but instead it's sort of a secret ability you may have not known about. In the Mighty Avengers Most Wanted files, this is explained as being an ability she possesses thanks to suction cups built into her suit. Honestly, you would think if this was a thing it would be kinda noticeable, but nah-uh, because those suction cups are actually microscopic, meaning that she can also look good, not terribly ridiculous or gaudy while she wall crawls, and making it almost look like this is a superpower she possesses, when really, it's all in her suit. She must have a lot of them though, because I don't know if microscopic suction cups have enough force to hold you actually onto a surface. But I suppose if you were covered in them, maybe. Anyways, comic book science, so we'll just let that one go. Number 6. Protected against illness. As part of the Red Room, Natasha and the other female spies had their bodies modified so that they are less susceptible to illness. Something that I kinda touched on earlier with the experimentation and everything, it grants them an improved immune system. But this doesn't just end there, it gets really creepy. But before we get into that, I also wanted to add that Nat has a small healing factor too as a result. It's believed she can heal 4 to 5 times faster than the average human. So yeah, she's no Wolverine or anything, but still, that's interesting to me. And even as a Black Widow fan, I didn't know until now that she had a healing factor, even if it feels, kind of minor in comparison to some other heroes in the Marvel Universe. However, that is not all her healing factor does. It has also been established in the comics that it prevents Black Widow and other agents from getting pregnant, as their bodies treat any potential pregnancies as illness, so that increased immune system, it's basically protecting them from pregnancy as well. Number 5. Resurrection. When Black Widow died in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I thought for sure she'd return and that perhaps her own film, while being presented as a prequel to us, would actually be a sequel, revealing this to the audience. I was wrong in that regard. However, there is a precedent for me to have considered that the MCU might go this route. It actually comes from her comic book history. Here, Black Widow died while fighting against the evil Hydra version of Captain America. However, she was shortly thereafter revived, finding she even possessed the memory of her own death. It was revealed that she was a clone of the original with all her previous memories intact, and that the Red Room actually possessed tons of clones of her and others ready for their use. Black Widow would end up destroying this new version of the Red Room and would take the place of her original self. Now at this point, we don't even think of her as a clone, just as Black Widow. Still coming back from the dead and being revived is a pretty powerful thing, and I do still wonder if this might somehow ever be possible for Nat in the MCU. Probably they won't ever do this thanks to the introduction of Yelena, but I mean, there is a precedent for it. And yeah, I know this wasn't something Natasha had control over, so not really her own power, but it was something she was able to do, return to life after dying. And that, to me, is pretty powerful. And like I said, something we all take for granted these days while reading her stories. Number 4. Master of Gravity. For a single issue of Tales of Suspense, Black Widow became a Master of Gravity. This was after she successfully used her seductive abilities to steal Tony Stark, aka Iron Man's, accidentally invented anti-gravity ray. I kid you not, apparently Tony invented this by accident. Also, back when Natasha had black hair. By the end of the issue, Iron Man had found a way to destroy the ray, preventing Natasha from wielding its power. Of course, this was back when Black Widow was a villain, hence why she stole it and why her and Iron Man were at odds here. But you know, for that one issue, hey, she could like move a mountain. Pretty cool. Number 3. Olympic level gymnast. While I don't have a ton of information on how or when, I think we can assume that for this one, Natasha probably got a lot of her training as part of the Red Room. Although it isn't something that comes up in the stories in the comics, at least not as far as I've seen. I have seen it mentioned, though, in the Marvel Encyclopedia. And I feel like based on the way Natasha moves and what she can do, it makes sense that she would be considered to be at an Olympic level when it comes to her gymnastic abilities. Especially when you consider she may have also been a trained ballerina, depending on which origins you prefer to believe to be the true one for Nat. I know her being a ballerina was kind of retconned, but I love that origin for her myself, and also just based on her fighting styles and abilities, I think this makes sense. She definitely seems both very strong but also very flexible. Could you imagine if Black Widow competed in the Olympics and won? That is a story I'd weirdly love to read. Someone out there, please write that one shot for me. Otherwise, I'll have to get started on the Black Widow fanfic myself. Although, honestly, would people read my Black Widow fanfics? Maybe. Number 2. Luck-based powers. While we don't know this one for sure, it definitely feels implied when we meet her alternate self, the Red Cat. This version of Natasha is a combination of both Black Cat and Black Widow, which you'd think would make her known as the Black Cat still, or the Cat Widow maybe, but nah, she's the Red Cat because her hair is red and her suit is red, so Red Cat. In the comic Symbiote Spider-Man Alien Reality, Red Cat appears as an ally and lover of Spider-Man in this world, and also ends up being a traitor to him as well. She is presumed to have abilities similar to the 616 counterparts of both of these characters, meaning she is a master spy and an escape artist, and also presumably has luck-based powers, specifically causing bad luck to those around her. Number 1. That's not all they do. Well, many people know about Black Widow's wrist shooters, which are often used to shoot out energy blasts or small tasers, which have been referred to as Black Widow's Bite. That's not all these weapons can do. Initially, her weaponized gauntlets were known simply as bracelets, and they seem to be pretty much just that at the start. They were just bracelets, with the KGB officially even calling them bracelets. They would deploy a line that Widow could use to swing around on, but after meeting Spider-Man, Natasha was inspired to do some upgrades to her bracelets. At times, they have apparently been reported to be up to almost 9 pounds in weight each, due to their complex inner workings and their versatility. In addition to her Widow's line and Widow's Bite, the gauntlets have also been known to emit tear gas, knockout gas, and carry explosives, while also being used as a communication device. The knockout gas ability has been referred to as the Widow's Kiss. Although I feel like, if you kiss someone and it makes you be knocked out, that doesn't seem good. Number 10. Faster than lightning. I knew Hyperion was fast, but I did not know he was that fast. Honestly, kind of the same with his strength. It's interesting to learn he's an Eternal because Eternals I always think of being somewhat limited in terms of their physical abilities, even though they are extremely powerful. Hyperion as an alien Eternal, though, might be even more powerful all around. In addition to the super strength you've likely marveled at before on the page, Hyperion is also extremely fast and has been shown to move faster even than light itself, if we are talking the Earth 13034 version of the character, which is also considered one of the main versions. We'll get into that in a minute. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to let us know that you love us and that you love Hyperion by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9. Eternal Physiology. Seriously, I just learned this one, even though it seems oddly intrinsic to this character. I don't know how I missed it. I thought Hyperion was just a powerful alien from another world like DC Superman, being one of the Marvel equivalent characters. And he is, but he's also, in a very Marvel way, an Eternal. A powerful Eternal alien. So I had to share that with you in case, like me, you also did not know this and you just thought he was an alien from another world. The important thing to know with Hyperion is there are many different versions of him, since he himself is not even even inherently an Earth 616 main continuity character. And when it comes to which Hyperion is considered the mainstay, that has actually kind of changed over time. For this point though, we're talking about Hyperion of Earth 712, who first appeared in Avengers 85 back in 1971. The first Hyperion to appear, I believe, in the comics. And when it comes to this version of the character, he is actually considered to be an Eternal. In fact, I think all versions of him are still considered to be Eternal, but still somehow I missed that origin. This is how Hyperion is able to channel energy, which ultimately charges his powers. To be clear, this version of Eternal physiology does not translate to robots like we learned in the MCU, which is also based off of a revelation of what the Eternals are in the comics as well, at least the Earth-based Eternals. However, at this time they were just prehistoric humans initially who were experimented on by the Celestials when they visited Earth more than a millennia ago, and the Celestials also went out to other planets, did this in other places, so there are other Eternals. Hence why Thanos is also kind of connected to the Eternals, he's also one. But from Titan. Number 8. Invulnerable in every sense. Okay, so I knew Hyperion was invulnerable, but what I didn't fully comprehend is just what high level of invulnerability he possesses. If we're talking about Earth 712 Hyperion, the first version of the character to appear, we have seen him completely unharmed by impossibly strong weapons and metals such as Ultimate Wolverine of Earth 1610's adamantium claws. Wolverine's claws are typically known for being able to cut through most things, but apparently Hyperion is not one of those things, or beings rather, that he can harm with his famous weapons. Aside from that, this version of Hyperion has also withstood direct blows from Thor's famous Uru hammer, Mjolnir. Withstanding the blow of Thor's hammer is no easy feat, and even some of the most resilient heroes and villains from Marvel crumble under the weight of its blows. So pretty impressive. Number 7. Doesn't need to breathe. We don't know this one for sure when it comes to certain versions of this character, but what we do know about Earth 712 Marcus Milton, aka Hyperion, is that he can travel in space without any assistance. He doesn't need a special suit, and it doesn't seem to be through the specific use of a power that he can protect himself from the cold vacuum of space. Some believe he can survive flying around in space where there is no oxygen because, well, he doesn't actually need to breathe. On top of this, we know that Hyperion can continue to fight for days on end without tiring, only growing tired after multiple days of relentless and unyielding battle, where he has to operate at his peak levels of power. While not confirmed for Earth 712's Hyperion, the version of Earth 13034 has confirmed that he doesn't depend on oxygen to survive, which likely means that his 712 counterpart doesn't need to breathe either. Number 6. Powered by the sun. Something else that I find fascinating about Hyperion, and that I didn't personally know, is that he is literally solar powered. He can actually absorb solar energy and use this to give himself energy, which is how he can fight for so long in battle. He basically takes in the solar energy and converts it to usable energy in his body. If his solar energy stores are full, once he depletes energy accrued through other more typical means for us humans, he can use the solar photons to keep himself going, converting those into energy which he then uses to power himself. I guess this shouldn't surprise me, considering he is, like I said earlier, basically one of Marvel's versions of DC's Superman, but I didn't know that he was that close to an adaptation, even sharing Clark's sort of solar-based abilities in some regards. It's a little different, but still similar. Number 5. What tires us only makes him stronger. Not only does Hyperion not need to breathe, which makes him a pretty scary foe to face, to be honest, if you had to, but he doesn't tire at all in the same way that we do. When humans exert themselves, and more specifically their muscles, they actually expel energy. The stress on your body and your muscles causes you to tire physically, and in some cases mentally, and causes you to get sore afterward in response to this stress. For Hyperion though, the stress and chemicals that we release that communicate to us to slow down actually only power him up. So as he gets exhausted, he actually becomes more energized. The fatigue turns into energy in his body because of his unique physiology, meaning that while some other Marvel characters might tire through when they're fighting Hyperion in a battle, Hyperion would be more than ready for the next round, despite clearly having just exerted himself. Number 4. Immune to extreme temperatures. While if you put most of us below freezing or above boiling temperatures, we'd simply get super messed up and eventually die, for Hyperion, this is not a risk. The version of the character that hails from Earth 13034 is actually so durable that he can resist the effects of extreme temperatures, meaning that freezing him or setting him ablaze will basically have no effect on the hero, at least when it comes to the temperature. He can apparently survive temperatures lower than -200 degrees Celsius and higher than 6 6,000 degrees Celsius. I can't even imagine spending a full day outside when it's higher than like 45 degrees Celsius, so I can't imagine how he doesn't just simply turn into a literal human puddle of goo in plus 6,000, but apparently he would still be solid, even in that super extreme heat. Number 3. Cosmic energy powered healing factor. I would expect someone like Hyperion to have a healing factor, but what I wouldn't have guessed is exactly how said healing factor works. For Hyperion, he is actually able to manipulate cosmic energy, and it is through this manipulation that he heals himself. His healing factor is so intense that it protects him at all times from disease, infections, and even erases the effects of aging, keeping him eternally young. However, it is also reliant on his cosmic energy stores, which is also what he uses when activating his atomic vision. So while you might have known that Hyperion has a healing factor, you may not have understood that overusing his atomic vision, which depletes his cosmic energy stores, results in Hyperion being unable to heal himself. However, as long as he can survive whatever injury was done to him, he can always replenish his stores to heal later, so it's a temporary thing. Using his atomic vision actually also does damage to his eyes, meaning that he actually has to use the cosmic energy to do both if he wants to be able to see after using his atomic vision powers. Number 2. Microscopic radiation vision. Hyperion can also see things that most humans cannot, such as microscopic traces of radiation on the human body. At one point, he is asked about a dead body and is able to identify that it is not from the same world as the one he occupies. He can tell this just from looking at the body that the solar radiation it has absorbed is basically not the same, thereby discerning that the being is from another world entirely. He shares this information with S.H.I.E.L.D. director at the time, Maria Hill, but believes that is something that she already knew about and wonders what else she knows that she might be keeping from him. So Hyperion isn't just a heavy hitter, he's also quite intelligent and has enhanced senses that only add to his knowledge and perspective of the world around him and those that inhabit it. Not someone you want to mess with, guys. Not someone you want to mess with. Number 1. Held off an incursion. If you are not familiar with the incursions, they are basically when various worlds started to come together, colliding. As a result, many Earths, their heroes, and their villains died, with those universes obliterating one another in the collision. When the incursions came for Hyperion's world, he decided to put himself in between the collision to stop it, and for a moment he actually succeeded, holding the two universes apart, using just his own strength. However, he couldn't hold this forever, and eventually the worlds would collide, but even then, Hyperion would remain! This was a feat accomplished by the Hyperion of Earth 13034. I still can't believe that he survived that. That's crazy.
Number 10. Thermokinesis. Considering his name is Iceman, everyone knows that Bobby Drake has cryokinesis, aka the ability to generate, manipulate, and fully control ice and snow. But this goes hand in hand with his thermokinesis as well. This is the ability to lower both his external and internal body temperature, which projects intense coldness from his body. Like the rest of us humies, the nerve centers for regulating Iceman's body temperature are found in the part of the brain called the hypothalamus. Unlike us though, Iceman can mentally override his hypothalamus to allow his body temperature to be lowered. This ability converts the latent thermal energies in and around his body into an unknown form of energy that is then dissipated. Now this would potentially hurt a human, but a related mutation has also rendered his body tissues unaffected by sub-zero temperatures, thankfully and luckily. Iceman can consciously immediately lower his body temperature from its normal 98 degrees Fahrenheit to absolute zero and lower within the span of a few tenths of a second. Number 9. Icy cover. As Iceman's body temperature drastically falls, the surrounding moisture in the air that is in contact with him also begins to lower in temperature. In a similar but much more extreme way that condensed moisture forms frost, the moisture surrounding Iceman forms an icy covering which encompasses his entire body and obscures his face. When Iceman first began doing this and appeared in the early X-Men comics, this ability essentially made our mutant look like a snowman. He was covered head to toe in snow. But as Bobby learned to increase the severity of his coldness, the consistency of this frozen moisture became crystalline ice. This ice constantly cracks with any movement of his body and immediately reforms, allowing Bobby to move, but with a cracking ice sound every time. Through practice, Iceman has learned to control the intensity of his coldness, and he can selectively lower the temperature of isolated parts of his body to cause this icy shielding in specific areas. Number 8. Organic ice form. But Bobby doesn't only cover himself in ice, he can also completely become ice. Hilariously and kind of redundantly, it's called organic ice. I don't even know if that makes sense. Though the appearance can be similar to when he covers himself in ice, in this form, Iceman is now virtually indestructible, or rather, he is basically unkillable, able to reform himself from being shattered or evaporated, and he is completely translucent in his ice form as well. He has even been incinerated while in human form and was able to rebuild himself in ice. In his ice form, he is able to use the moisture in the air to form spikes, shields, and attach other extra appendages to his body, which he can use in combat. Number 7. Ice Golems. Unsurprisingly, Iceman has the ability to create structures out of ice. The level of detail is determined by his own imagination, as his mastery over his powers has reached the atomic level. For most of his superhero career, Iceman was not able to make the ice sculptures move of their own accord, but this all changed during the Battle of the Atom event in 2013, when Iceman showed off a new extension of his abilities. It was revealed that Iceman can create basic ice structures that possess a rudimentary intelligence. One of these sculptures actually rebelled against Iceman and joined the Brotherhood, which is just freaking weird. It also makes no sense, but this is a comic, so we just go with it. These constructs have been seeming ice clones of Iceman himself, or they have also been big, hulking behemoths and ice monsters. Some other constructs Bobby has created have been turning raindrops into fists that he used against the Iron Fist, a crystal-like ice focuser able to focus the laser beams of Cyclops, and even an entire ice city with intricate details. Number 6. Ice Zord. Bouncing off those semi-sentient constructs to something a bit more awesome that I think deserves its own whole point. In Wolverine and the X-Men issue 33 to 34, Iceman is part of a group of mutant faculty at Wolverine's Jean Grey School for Higher Learning sent to take on the Hellfire Academy and Cade Kilgore. Cade has been utilizing a handful of sentient living volcano behemoths to defend his academy, and while the heroes have a sentient living island fighting on their side, they only have one. So, what does Iceman do? Iceman creates an absolutely massive ice behemoth that looks like Voltron or like a Power Ranger Zord, with an absolutely massive ice sword, and he takes it into battle, slicing the behemoths apart and yelling "Glacier Fist" as he commands the ice Voltron from inside an ice cockpit. It's absolutely amazing and completely bonkers. Number 5. Hydrokinesis. Alright, so we know Iceman can control ice. But there was a time when Emma Frost mentally controlled Bobby, and she utilized his powers in ways that he had never even imagined. It turns out that since Iceman can control ice, which is just frozen water, then it actually makes total sense that he also has hydrokinesis, or the ability to manipulate water. And since he is a potential Omega level mutant, he can do it at a molecular level. We know that he can use surrounding moisture to augment himself, but when Emma was controlling him, she used his power to travel within large bodies of water very quickly by breaking down to his base levels in the water and then reforming at his destination. Iceman has demonstrated the ability to be transformed into nothing more than water or water vapor, yet remain conscious and retain the use of his powers. Essentially, wherever there is any moisture of any kind, Iceman is a threat. Number 4. Cryokinetic perception / cryo travel. Okay, so I'm going to wrap these two up into one, even though they aren't really technically fully the same, although they kind of are at the same time. For starters, after Bobby, whose powers were significantly amplified and who was kind of a little bonkers at the time, managed to freeze the earth in ice and snow, he gained the ability to spread his actual consciousness through the ice and through the snow to allow him to perceive literally all events occurring within it. He could monitor the entire earth through the ice and snow, and it made him practically a god. With his ability to transform organic matter, such as the human body, to organic ice and back again, it is possible for him to project his consciousness through moisture molecules and reform his body at the destination, like he did when Emma Frost controlled him, and he did indeed do this in this story as well, traveling through the ice and snow and appearing wherever he wanted. Number 3. Cellular replacement. We already talked about, a few times, Iceman's hydrokinesis and how he has literally turned himself into and traveled through the molecules of water. Well, Bobby also eventually discovered that he was able to use his control over moisture to draw ambient moisture into himself and thus use that moisture to replace his own body's cells. Quote, a body swap done one piece, one cell at a time. This upgrade to his already insane abilities allowed Bobby to avoid receiving a fatal dose of neurotoxin by letting the poisoned molecules of his body dissipate into vapor and then be replaced by untainted water molecules from his surroundings. Iceman can replace his own cells with new ones, healing and purging himself by remaking his own body. As long as there is moisture, Iceman cannot be stopped, it's just a fact. Number 2. Thermovision. With such a fine-tuned control over cold and temperature like what Iceman has, it would make sense that he would be able to maybe sense or feel heat. But it turns out he can literally see it. Because of the absence of heat around himself when his temperature is dropped, Bobby can literally see beings simply based on the heat signatures they give off. This happened most famously when the X-Men were facing against Onslaught. At the time, Onslaught managed to mess the X-Men's perception of things and became invisible. Luckily, the X-Men had Bobby. He scanned the entire room, and thanks to the heat that Onslaught's body was naturally giving off, Bobby saw Onslaught the minute he entered the room, using his ice blasts to attack him and break his psionic shielding, allowing the other X-Men to see him too. And finally, in at number 1, he can stop the Juggernaut. The Juggernaut is not just strong. The Juggernaut is fueled by magic, powered by a massively powerful extra-dimensional being called Sidorak. Through Sidorak, Juggernaut was granted the ability to gain unstoppable momentum with each step, to the point that not even the hammer of Thor can stop him in his tracks. Who cares about ancient magical Uru metal hammers though, when you have the power of ice? Iceman managed to completely stop the Juggernaut in his tracks during one of the X-Men's many encounters with Cain Marko. Now it is worth noting that Juggernaut was not in his top form at the time, but regardless, stopping the Juggernaut dead in his tracks using massive amounts of ice to immobilize him is incredibly impressive. But it wasn't the only way Bobby has stopped the guy, and this one, I have to warn you, is ridiculous even for a comic book. During another battle with the Juggernaut, Iceman got creative with his powers. Iceman used his powers to, and I quote, freeze the speed of light around him. Freeze the speed of light around Juggernaut. Iceman is so powerful he temporarily rewrote the laws of physics themselves to achieve his victory. It's also worth noting that in this same fight, he created wings made out of ice that actually allowed him to fly, which I don't think is possible. Personally though, if it was me, and I'm just gonna put in my own little opinion here, I would just make like a loop of ice so the Juggernaut slips and goes around and around and around and around, gaining speed and momentum, and then I would give it like a little offshoot ramp and just send him careening into space, like unable to stop. He would just be gone. What are you gonna do? Nothing. You can't stop. I'm just saying.
Number 10. Control over life and death. Obviously, as the Phoenix or even the Dark Phoenix, Jean has been shown to have this ability. But did you know that this power actually first manifested when Jean's powers did, really going on to showcase the potential of her future abilities. When Jean's best friend Annie died when she was little after being tragically hit by a car, the traumatic experience caused Jean's powers to manifest. She reached out and created a psychic link between her and her friend, and despite being very new to these abilities, Jean was actually able to hold her friend's mind there, keeping her alive and trying to protect her from the encroaching darkness. Unfortunately, she was not strong or skilled enough just yet to do so for more than a few moments, and ultimately could not bring her friend back to life as Annie's injuries were simply too great. Eventually, Annie's mind disappeared, dying while their minds were linked, leaving Jean alone in the darkness. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when I get to talk about Jean Grey, I know I do, be sure to let us know by clicking that subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. And if you are, thank you. Number 9. A God's Mind. Sure, the Progenitor at this point is not your standard Celestial. It was actually created by the Eternals and the Avengers, chiefly with major help from the mutant Mr. Sinister and the main Avenger Tony Stark. The Progenitor was revived and reprogrammed, given new morals that were dictated by Earth's heroes in the hopes that it would help the Eternals in ending the war between Druig, who was then ruler of the Eternals, Eternal Prime if you will, and the mutants, who he had classified as deviants. However, this plan backfired when the Celestial decided to blame the inhabitants of Earth for the state of the planet, and put the entire populace basically on trial. In an attempt to save the world, Jean and a covert team infiltrated the progenitor, moving around inside it in the hopes of reaching its kill switch, so they could basically turn it off. Without Jean though, they never would have even made it very far. At the end, Jean was also crucial to the team's efforts, holding psychic damage that would have easily crushed them at bay, and breaking into the Celestials' mind. No small feat considering Celestials are giant cosmic gods. And yes, I know this one was one that was still made by the people of Earth sort of, but still, the wiring's all still there, you know what I mean? Number 8. Telepathy. While this one might seem obvious to most readers in the present day, it's important to note that Jean's powerful telepathic skills were actually for many years a secret to both readers and actually to Jean herself. Initially, when we're introduced to Jean in X-Men issue number 1, it is her telekinetic abilities that are put on display. She picks up a book and flips through it. And I gotta admit, initially Jean's powers actually seem like the best of the bunch, with the most potential in terms of power levels. And yes, I know this is not how Jean's powers would be depicted, but I'm just saying in that first issue when I was introduced to Jean, I thought she was super cool. However, this feeling of her being super powerful that I had would be very short-lived, as Jean would be shown to struggle with even lifting her own weight telekinetically. In fact, at one point, I think it's even mentioned that Jean's own physical weight is her max limit for what she can lift with her mind. Apparently, what one can lift with one's own body is weirdly relevant, or used to be anyways, when it came to what a superhero could lift with their mind. Jean's like, I can't lift that much. They were like, you can't lift that much with your mind either, girl. Evidently, we didn't want to let Jean be too powerful. Otherwise, who would act as the team's damsel in distress? Which was the role Jean quickly became relegated to filling, honestly. However, later on, not only would her telekinetic powers become stronger as a result of both training and her bond to the Phoenix Force, but we'd also learn that this wasn't even Jean's major ability. No. As a psionic, Jean actually became known for being more powerful as a telepath, an ability that was hidden away from her for most of her life in an attempt to protect her from her own inexperience and her power's instability, thanks to mental blocks that were put in place by, you guessed it, Charles Xavier, who first met Jean when she was very young and her powers had just begun to manifest. Charles, of course, would eventually remove these blocks later in Jean's life when he felt that Jean was better equipped to handle these extraordinarily powerful abilities. And maybe when he was like, you know what, I should probably, the cat's out of the bag, I gotta let people know Jean's actually super OP. I think he didn't want Jean to harsh his mellow, to be honest. Number 7. Empathy. One of the most overlooked powers that I think Jean and some others possess is the power of empathy. Empathy basically means that you feel what others feel. When someone says to you, I empathize, it's different than saying I sympathize, because they aren't just, imagining what you're going through and trying to understand it. They actually feel what you feel, likely having shared an experience with you or an emotional response at the very least. In comic book terms, being empathic, it doesn't usually just mean feeling what others feel. It can also mean controlling others' emotions, or using the emotions of people around you to make other people feel differently. A power that Jean has demonstrated before, like when she used her empathic skills to defeat Xavier's evil twin, Cassandra Nova. And she's actually used this ability to defeat a lot of people, I'm gonna be honest. But I don't think people think about the empathy, and it's pretty crazy, man. Number 6. Finding the weakness. I mean, as a telepath, of course Jean can scan your mind and take with her any information that she finds. And this, of course, includes, you guessed it, any weaknesses that you have. Especially if you fall into the trap of thinking about said weaknesses while Jean is in your mind. If you have a nut allergy, watch out if Jean Grey's around you if you're fighting her. But even if you don't think about your weaknesses, Jean could probably easily find this out. That is exactly what she managed to do, although it wasn't quite as easy to know when she got inside his head. And you'd think telepathically he'd be pretty gifted himself, being the creator and leader of a hive mind as the Clintar and symbiote King in Black. But even Null could not resist Jean's power. Although she did have to try really hard, admittedly. Number 5. Overcoming mental blocks. This is most likely a case of writers just forgetting the focus of Jean's psionic powers in the earlier days, but it happened in continuity. So that also means we can kind of count their possible mistake as actually a major strength for Jean. And if another writer wanted to reflect back on this moment, they could easily use it to bolster Jean's power levels, even back in the day when she was notably written to be a lot weaker. Remember how I said that Professor X created mental blocks for Jean when it came to her telepathy, which he later removed when he felt she was ready to handle her own off-the-charts power levels? Well, apparently apparently early on, Jean did still display some telepathic abilities, even somehow with those blocks supposedly in place. She read Professor X's mind in an issue of Captain America, sensing that something was wrong by reading his thoughts. She literally says like she read his mind basically. If this is true and it's considered canon, it would mean that Jean temporarily pushed through Xavier's mental blocks to read his mind, which, gotta be honest, that's like on a whole other level of power, I think. So if we want to count it as canon, there you go. Number 4, interstellar travel. When it comes to those with psionic abilities, we don't typically think of them as cosmic heroes who can fly through space and fight aliens, but guess what? Jean can. While bonded with the Phoenix Force, Jean has been shown to be capable of interstellar travel, propelling herself through space. The vacuum of space, she can just fly right through it and she feels fine, doesn't even need a spacesuit. She has also been shown to be able to fly and make it appear as though others are flying on Earth by using her telekinesis, but that one you probably already knew about. The interstellar travel though, that might have caught you unawares. Number 3, communicating undetected. Another great power as a telepath that Jean manages to have is keeping her telepathic conversations secret, which, when there's a lot of other telepaths around you, is not easy. Basically, there are many other powerful telepaths around you who could be trying to pry and eavesdrop on you, and a lot of them are also powerful. But Jean has managed to keep more than a few mental conversations a secret, even from some of the other most powerful telepaths in the universe, including Null, the god of symbiotes. While Null himself was in the middle of a telepathic conversation with Dylan, Jean actually managed to use her powers to slip into said conversation completely unnoticed, with Null not even aware that Jean was also talking to Dylan telepathically at the same time, and that Dylan wasn't really listening to him so much as he was listening to Jean. Honestly kinda rude, but also, yeah, Jean's trying to tell Dylan how to save the day, so fair enough. Number 2, control over nightmares. I don't know what's more frightening, the fact that Jean can basically manipulate people's dreams and nightmares through the villain Nightmare, or the threat she gave Nightmare after defeating him, where she basically said if she had to deal with him again, she was gonna destroy him at an atomic level. She's like, look, I don't like to end people's lives, but if you mess with me again, I will destroy you at an atomic level. Either way you slice it though, when it comes to nightmares that have been created by the god of nightmares himself, Nightmare, Jean is the one who would really call the shots between them when they're pitted against one another. I've seen them run into each other a few times, and it does not end well for Nightmare. Number 1, the Phoenix Force. This is less of a power and more of a really interesting fact about a power. So for those of you that heard me say that title and go, well obviously we know that, Amanda, yes, yeah, I know. But I actually didn't know this fact myself initially, and I was surprised by it somewhat, so I figured I'd share it with you. We all know that Jean is one of the preferred hosts, if not, I would say, the preferred host for the Phoenix Force. But did you know that the all-powerful cosmic entity was actually holding Jean back? That's right. Jean has stated before that she actually became aware after the Phoenix Force left her that it was causing her to hold back her abilities and her power for fear of the Phoenix taking hold over her, because then she wouldn't have control. So while many like to say that Jean has only ever been extremely powerful when she's merged with the Phoenix, it turns out it's probably just the opposite. So yeah, Jean destroying like a whole world, apparently that's Jean holding back. Which honestly, to me, I gotta say, that all kind of makes sense. Saying Jean isn't actually powerful and that it's all the Phoenix has always felt like a cop-out to me, considering it's her own power and her own empathy that the Phoenix was seemingly attracted to in the first place. So you would think that would mean that she's at least on the same power level as the Phoenix, if not more powerful, and that's why it was like, yeah, I want you as the host, because you got the power.
In a 10 accelerated decoy, Miguel O'Hara possesses the proportional strength of a spider, granting him superhuman strength capable of lifting up to 10 tons at his peak, but this enhanced strength also extends to his legs, allowing him to leap great distances, reaching heights of at least 30 feet in a single bound, but also his speed. O'Hara's speed surpasses the natural limits of any human athlete, enabling him to move and run at extraordinary velocities. His agility, balance, and overall coordination are heightened beyond human capabilities, surpassing even the finest athletes, but his reflexes are so greatly enhanced, where he can actually run so fast that he leaves behind a body double that enemies will focus on because they think that it's him. Yeah, that's right, the dude basically can create a time remnant, like from the Flash, but not. In at 9, telepathy. This one you might not have known. Miguel O'Hara possesses the ability to communicate with others through telepathy, although the full extent of this power is still unknown, and its exact limits have yet to really be explored. O'Hara has demonstrated effortless communication with others using this gift. It is believed that this telepathy is closely connected to his spider sense, although he doesn't really have it. It's believed that it kind of of serving as kind of a compensation, serving as just a unique manifestation of heightened senses. I feel that this connection was best demonstrated in Spider-Man Edge of Time from 2011, in which Miguel is able to use a sample of Peter's DNA from a genetics program at Alchemax to create a chronal link, which is just a telepathic link between himself and Peter. To which Peter asks, are the other me's in my head too? But they weren't. Miguel tries to explain like the situation of that game to Peter, however Peter believes that there's a crazed killer on the loose in the building, so that he has to stop him before he kills everyone. But yeah, it's a great game, okay? Edge of Time, 10 out of 10, play it. Innate telescopic vision. Miguel also possesses exceptional visual acuity that surpasses that of average humans obviously, but even more so than you'd think. His eyesight allows him to see objects with incredible clarity at a much greater distance than normal, which obviously I'm wearing glasses I am in incredible envy of because I'm nearsighted. But even in low light conditions, O'Hara maintains the same level of visual perception, enabling him to navigate in near complete darkness. It is speculated that he may have the ability to perceive the infrared spectrum, allowing him to detect body heat and potentially see beyond what is visible to others, but that's yet to be proven from my knowledge at least. He also possesses a superior flicker fusion horizon, granting him the ability to perceive details that would appear as a blur to most individuals. This heightened vision acts as a form of early warning system, enabling him to anticipate and react to attacks from a distance. Additionally, his vision extends to the detection of energy waves, and initially he had to actually wear sunglasses to cope with this heightened sensitivity, but continued to wear them after adapting his enhanced visual capability. But yeah, he had to wear sunglasses, and it actually ends up becoming a weakness too, which is kind of weird, but hey, it's still a thing. There you go. In its 7 venomous fangs, Miguel resides in a timeline devastated by a past civil war. Trapped within the corrupt corporation of Alchemax, Miguel's scientific brilliance is exploited by his employers, who ensnare him in a web of addiction to prevent his escape. Seeking to rewrite his genetic makeup to get rid of this addiction, Miguel embarked on an experiment to restore his former life by utilizing a copy of his pre-addiction DNA. However, his plans were thwarted as his DNA became intertwined with that of a spider, resulting in a transformative mutation. As a result, Miguel assumed the characteristics of a spider, with fangs this time reminiscent of the arachnid species, and talon-like claws mirroring their legs. Alongside these physical changes though, he acquired, all the normal stuff. Super strength, speed, agility, but yeah, he has fangs that can actually inject people with a paralytic poison, which is insane. It's so creepy that Gwen in Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse thought that he was a vampire. If people are thinking that you're freaking Edward Cullen, then it's creepy, okay? The dude was 107, hitting on a 17-year-old and marrying her within a year and 8 months, and 6 of those months passed because they had broken up. If you're being compared to Edward Cullen, that's creepy. Sorry, bro. In its 6 organic spinrits webbing. In Miguel's forearms, he possesses spinrits that produce a potent and adhesive web-like substance from the back of his wrists. This organic webbing serves for multiple purposes, allowing him to swing around buildings and restrain individuals when needed, but his webs are chemically identical to authentic spider silk, setting them apart from the synthetic webbing used by the original Spider-Man, more in line with the Sam Raimi trilogy, which could be where Raimi drew his inspiration from. But at the very least, he won't have the issue that makes him run out of web, unless he has a web block, at least if he's waiting an hour between webbings. Oh wait, sorry, that's his forearm. My mistake. Moving on. Halfway through into number 5, marksmanship. This Spider-Man was able to hit a hostile holding a hostage multiple times with a pistol, with a bullet only grazing the hostage. I mean, let's be honest here, this isn't the ideal situation. We'd much rather the bullets not graze the hostage, but it's still better than totally failing, and in a way, it actually makes sense that he's skilled with firearms. He would have to have pretty good aim with all the web slinging he does, okay? He has to be precise with it when he's using it to fight villains. It would definitely take some skill to shoot a web and grab someone's hand specifically with it, and if you weren't good with your aim, you'd be a pretty dead Spider-Man, especially when swinging throughout the city, okay? Come on. If you miss the building, splat. And given his speed, if the man can move so fast that he leaves behind an after image of himself, he should have enough time to properly aim his webbing, okay, and a gun. Yeah, while it's unexpected, it does make complete sense that he has good aim. He kinda has to, I guess. In at 4, original spider suit. This isn't necessarily a power, but hey, I'm gonna count it. O'Hara's costume incorporates advanced technology and materials to enhance its abilities. Constructed from unstable molecules akin to the future Foundation costumes worn by the Fantastic Four, it possesses exceptional durability to withstand the sharpness of his claws without tearing. Additionally, the costume features a lightweight airfoil positioned on its back, and this ingenious addition emits controlled anti-gravity particles, enabling O'Hara to gracefully glide and maneuver through the air by harnessing just the natural currents of updrafts. The combination of these innovative elements enhances O'Hara's mobility and agility, allowing him to navigate surroundings with even more ease and precision. So yeah, while it's his suit and not necessarily a power, it's enhancing his already just natural powers. So yeah, I'm gonna count it, and you're gonna deal with it. Again, this whole video is a canon event, you can't change it. And at 3, talons. In addition to all of the other extraordinary abilities, Miguel possesses retractable talons on his fingers and toes that allow him to crawl on surfaces like a spider. These razor-sharp talons, combined with his immense strength, can effortlessly rend even sturdy materials like cinder blocks into just ash, as demonstrated by severing Venom 2099's arm. Yeah, that was a thing he did. Miguel has also employed his talons to eliminate the Specialist, a powerful super soldier employed by Stark Fujikawa, and his talons effortlessly cut through molecularly dense body wraps designed to restrain him, and even enabled him to tear Electro 2099 in half after enduring an electroshock and evading another. Yeah, this dude's brutal. Notably, Miguel's talons are potent enough to actually punch out a shark, easily slicing through its flesh. So yeah, it's pretty damn scary. But ultimately, in number 2, accelerated vision. God, this dude's eyes are insane. I am jealous. O'Hara's visual acuity surpasses that of what you even thought before. That's right, because there's a third goddamn number. His vision remains equally as sharp in low light conditions, granting him the ability to see in the dark. But like, yeah, it's not as heightened as Spider Sense. Okay, he doesn't have Spider Sense, but he still has insane vision in dark, and it still serves as an early warning, allowing him to anticipate and react to attacks from afar. Interestingly enough, he actually lacked the traditional Spider Sense possessed by Spider-Man until the game Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, where Madame Web actually gave him the power for just the series of the game, but he didn't actually have them after the game. So it was just temporary for that game and that game alone, and he didn't have it after it, but hey, it's still pretty sick. And finally, into number 1, extreme durability. This dude is a freaking tank, okay? His suit proved impervious to the corrosive touch of Venom 2099. He withstood an energy blast from the powerful Inhuman Lash, which should have disintegrated him. He survived an explosion and endured a brutal beating from Maestro, which is a future version of the Hulk with heightened strength and Bruce's intellect. Miguel remained relatively unscathed after enduring plasma blasts meant to subdue the Hulk of 616. He tore a tank turret off while being electrocuted. He's had exceptional agility, he can skydive for miles and land unharmed. He survived a tanker explosion that caused a building to collapse. He took a blow from Thor 2099 that sent him into a building, only coming out slightly dizzy. Doctors were astonished by his healing factor, but I'm astonished that he's still alive, okay? Miguel shrugged off a point-blank shotgun blast to the chest and successfully dug his way out of a collapsed building. What the hell? And then in his upgraded suit, he can endure a direct hit from the howitzer artillery cannon, withstanding a staggering force of 100 tons. Yeah. What the hell? I thought that his eyes were bad, or I thought his eyes were good, but like, I want that. I want to be able to skydive for miles and just superhero landing it. That'd be dope. Imagine these videos. I would come in from the ceiling like Anthony Padilla every single time, and it would actually happen. It wouldn't be effects. But hey, if you want to see more crazy things, be sure you click in the video that's popping up on screen now. Hopefully it's not something like hottest female superheroes who were pregnant while fighting crime, because I'm sure that's something we've done. In at 10, acidic hands. Discovered by Kane Parker after the Clones event, a deformity in his hands causes Kane to possess the ability to generate an endothermic energy that upon skin-to-skin contact inflicts severe burn marks on individuals. Yeah, this man can use his hands that stick to walls to also burn people. Usually he would leave his distinctive marks across a person's face, calling it the mark of Kane, although it is believed that he can do so on other parts of the body which I mean it makes sense given that, you know, you can just grab on with a hand and then boom, you're burned. But interestingly enough, he also utilizes this way in like a non-harmful manner, using it to burn away his like beard hair, which just gives him a better trim, which is just kind of funny. I like the fact that he uses it to burn his hand into people's faces, but then also just gives himself a nice little trim. But while this ability was discovered by Kane, Peter soon after learns that he can do the same thing. And while he hasn't used this ability, he is still able to do it and just chooses not to because it's a horrible thing to do. He can also pull people's skin off using the stickiness of his hands, which I have asked before, like I've proposed that idea before because I think that he should have threatened to do that to Kingpin instead of filling his lungs with web, but oh well. In at 9, Camouflage. Now this is one of the primary abilities used by Miles Morales' Spider-Man, however, you can actually see that in Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man he has this ability as well. Not to the same extent, of course, he can't turn invisible, but there's a theory about how this presents itself. Firstly, the fact that Spider-Man talks to MJ, Aunt May, and Harry without them recognizing Peter's voice could be explained by this just being thanks to this camouflage ability. MJ only recognizes that Peter is Spider-Man after he wants to tell her, you know, after she kisses her fiance upside down. Like, he wants her to know, so of course the camouflage would be off then, and Harry only learns his identity after literally taking his mask off. So yeah, this would also explain why the guy on the train in Spider-Man 2 describes the almost 30-year-old Maguire as just a kid barely older than my son. Or in the comics and animated series, we see that Peter eventually mutates into a giant spider. Maybe staying human is this camouflage ability. His power keeps him looking human. To further support this, in the animated series, Peter starts losing his powers shortly before mutating into the spider creature. If one of his powers was keeping him human, then it would make total sense that he mutates after losing them. And Peter actually started losing his powers in Spider-Man 2, so maybe that's a storyline we could have seen later on. In at 8, Stingers. The Other represents a potent spider deity that's intricately connected to the web of life and destiny. While the true nature of its purpose remains enigmatic, the entity grants its chosen vessels heightened abilities and the potential for transformation into a spider-like humanoid monster in times of peril or intense anger. The Earth 616 Spider-Man was selected by the Great Weaver to serve as the receptacle for the power of the Other when he assumed the mantle of Spider-Man. However, due to his subconscious resistance, Spider-Man suppressed and denied this spider aspect until a confrontation with the inheritor Morlun, who consumed the essence of totem avatars, prompting a resurgence of his connection to the Other. At one point during the storyline, Peter Parker has created retractable stingers that are concealed beneath his wrists. And so yeah, with these stingers possessed like a razor sharp edge that could be extended when needed, and then they also delivered like a venom that induced temporary paralysis into his target, which is kind of dope. Kane Parker actually is currently the individual who uses this ability because of course it's Kane, but yeah, it's still pretty dope. And it's 7, Clairvoyance. When you think about it, Spider Sense is kind of predicting the future. It doesn't give you visions or show you exactly what will happen like is typically associated with clairvoyance, but instead it's presented just like a really good gut instinct. Like that tingling sensation that accompanies the spider sense can vary in intensity, providing an indication of the threat level, but like a casual encounter with a potential adversary who isn't actively engaging with an individual may trigger a mild alert, which means that you should be cautious. But on the other hand, when you're facing like an imminent and life-threatening danger like a sniper, like the sensation is going to intensify significantly, even possibly becoming painful. And instinctively it compels you into action. And while the spider sense doesn't reveal the specific nature of the threat, it offers you guidance on the direction that you should move in order to evade it and things like that. Okay, this extraordinary ability warns you of various perils, okay, ranging from projectiles to like lasers and even contaminated food. So yeah, I'm gonna call that a form of clairvoyance. I can't do that. When I do it, it's called autism. In at 6, Equilibrium. While yes, having sticky limbs and appendages makes it easy and possible to stick to walls, that's not all that you need to actually be Spider-Man. Like sure you can stand on a wall, but even with all the strength of your abs, you wouldn't be able to keep you like balanced and standing upright, alright? No one can do that, not even Chuck Norris. Like how else could you not lose your momentum or anything while swinging through New York, okay? He's swinging around buildings, through alleys, even through like the spaces between between cabs and their backs, okay? There's no way that this guy could do all of that just inherently, okay? Like, yeah, he's got the powers of a spider, but spiders don't swing around the city doing flips. His center of gravity is constantly fixing himself to keep himself balanced while chasing after red psychopathic space aliens and dudes in rhino costumes. So, yeah, I'm gonna call that a power. And at 5, super speed. Spider-Man's agility and acrobatics are often associated with his spider sense and spider qualities, but there's another superpower that often goes unnoticed: incredible speed. Okay, while swinging between buildings, Spider-Man can cover 2 miles in a mere 5 seconds. And it's not just like his web slinging that propels him. His speed allows him to also avoid attacks and dodge bullets. Okay, if you can dodge bullets, you're freaking fast. Spider-Man's exceptional speed was showcased extremely well during the Civil War storyline when he attacked Luke Cage's mansion prior to switching sides. He bursted into the mansion, faced off a room filled with SWAT team officers, Scarlet Witch, and Hawkeye, but he moved so swiftly that he appeared as a blur, taking down multiple opponents without being detected. Okay, this often overlooked power grants Spider-Man an incredible advantage in combat, and explains quite a lot. I mean, he won't be beating Quicksilver or Flash in any races, but dude's still fast as hell. Okay, if you look like a blur, then yeah, you're fast. And at 4, talking to spiders. God, thank God they don't talk about this one anymore, because spiders. The power to control and summon spiders may initially appear better suited for like a horror comic, but it actually happens to be one of Spider-Man's lesser known abilities. He chooses not to emphasize the terrifying aspect of this power, thank the Lord. Instead, he uses it in more of like a collective strength sense, tapping into the power of many rather than just aiming to haunt his opponents with lifelong nightmares. Thank you, Peter. This skill likely was introduced into the comics because people were like watching Ant-Man a little too much, you know, because he can like control ants, and now even Squirrel Girl can command squirrels. So it just seems like if you have a connection to an animal, you should be able to control them, apparently. So yeah, Spider-Man had that sort of connection established with arachnids. In truth, it feels more aligned with like Venom or Carnage, but I mean, the only reason that Venom has spider powers is because he bonded to Peter in the first place, so I understand why that wouldn't happen. But like, yeah, okay, they're twisted villains who would fully exploit this ability, but thank God Venom doesn't have it. Yeah, interestingly enough though, it's not the mainstream Spider-Man who possesses this ability, but rather Kane Parker, but I'm sure Spider-Man could do it too. If he can do the acid hands and he had the claws, I'm sure he could do this, but thank God he doesn't. Getting close to the end in number 3, regeneration. While webbing is handy for transportation and apprehending criminals and sometimes even just making a mess if you want to, Peter's mind actually lets him use this ability in unconventional and actually kind of genius ways, specifically turning it back on himself. This gave rise to the concept of a web cocoon, an audacious idea that bears resemblance to how Peter immobilizes criminals with webbing until the authorities arrive, because you know he wraps them up. But the only difference is that when Peter does the web cocoon on himself, he uses it as a tool for hibernation and accelerated healing. Peter has only used this extremely insane skill on one occasion, but it was because he sustained near fatal injuries during a battle. So he encased himself in a cocoon of webbing to induce rapid healing. It's so insanely cool and a tremendously valuable ability for Spider-Man, but it appears to be exclusive to Peter himself and doesn't really extend to others, and again, he hasn't used it again since. The primary reason behind the limitation was, well, I mean, he's in hibernation when this is happening. You can't really produce Spider-Man comics when Peter's not Spider-Man. But also, while he's in there, he sheds the damaged skin and basically regenerates a whole new body, which is gonna make us all wonder the same thing that WandaVision did. Ship of Theseus? Is it the same Peter, or is it a new Peter if he regenerated basically everything? There you go, debate it in the comments. You're welcome. Engagement. But ultimately, in number 2, radiation resistance. Now, while some spider-related abilities are well known within Spider-Man's world, you know, wall crawling, proportional strength, knowing the formula to make webs, spider sense, one of them is actually lesser known, but in reality makes a lot of sense. Spider-Man has demonstrated a resistance to poisons and harmful chemicals on multiple occasions, and while not a pivotal power, it does serve a purpose. Essentially, if a villain attempts to poison poison Peter Parker, their efforts would just be in vain. Moreover, if Mary Jane were to betray Peter and attempt to slip something into his coffee, he would remain oblivious. His resistance to basic poisons could potentially be exploited if someone like knew this and like tried to use it against him, so it's often overlooked. But yeah, it adds another layer of protection for Peter that reflects just like the fact that he is in essence just a Spider-Man. And given that his powers were given to him by a radioactive spider, the resistance extends to radiation as well. So yeah, that's right. If Green Goblin ever goes to Chernobyl, Spidey can still stop him. And finally, in at number 1, Spider-Mobile. Hell yes, I love how ridiculous this is. Corona Motors, aiming to promote their environmentally friendly car engine, enlisted the services of advertising firm Carter and Lombardo to propose the idea of a Spider-Mobile in Spider-Man comics. Initially dismissing it as foolish, Spider-Man reconsidered when he realized the dire need for money to cover his rent and expenses. So with the assistance of the Human Torch, they successfully constructed the Spider-Mobile in the comics. After a crash course in driving, Spider-Man's first encounter with the vehicle led him to capture one of Hammerhead's henchmen. However, Mysterio ends up getting Spider-Man to dump the car in a river, prompting Corona Motors to demand its return, despite the inability to locate it in the water. Spider-Man faced a modified version of the Spider-Mobile, engineered by the Tinkerer later on, engaging in a fierce battle with it. Spider-Man eventually subdued it and returned the damaged imitation Spider-Mobile to Carter and Lombardo, but yeah, that's a thing that happened in the comics. Yeah, there you go. And it said resistance to telepathy. Psychics in the Marvel Universe are undeniably real, with a significant number of mutants possessing psychic abilities, including members of the X-Men. Professor X, the X-Men founder, is a powerful psychic, and Jean Grey initially displayed telekinesis before unlocking her own psychic powers. Rachel Grey, Jean Grey's daughter from an alternate universe, is also a psychic and frequently joins the X-Men, but despite the prevalence of psychics, some heroes in the universe receive training to defend themselves against psychic attacks and probing, such as Wolverine, who was given psionic shields by Charles Xavier to enhance his resistance. While these defenses are not foolproof, they offer valuable protection, especially when there are so many damn psychics. Notably, even some villains have safeguards against psychics, like Magneto and Juggernaut, who has that helmet that prevents Professor X from accessing their thoughts. But in a bizarre turn of events, Red Skull consumed Professor X's brain, gaining psychic abilities himself. So there you go, Wolverine, you'll be able to fight against Red Skull a little bit more, I guess. Is that really a common problem for you? I don't think so. In at 9, lie detection. Logan, or Wolverine, whatever you want to call him, possesses a heightened sense of smell and hearing that surpasses that of an average human. His sense of smell is incredibly potent, which allows him to detect scents from a considerable distance, making it useful for tracking down enemies, but this acute sense of smell enables him to actually pick up on certain emotions as well, such as fear, which is emanating from individuals, pheromones, all that jazz. Okay? His hearing is also quite exceptional, allowing him to perceive sounds that are far away and even detect softer noises that are typically beyond the range of normal perception. So, combining these powers, Wolverine actually becomes basically a human lie detector. By focusing on a specific person, he can determine if they are telling the truth or not by relying on his sense of smell, detecting changes in their scent and sweating patterns if they lie, while using his hearing to actually concentrate on their heartbeat and detect any shifts in their tone of voice, which is pretty dope, and I wish I had that in my last relationship. In at 8, Berserker Rage. Here I am just dumping my trauma. Wolverine possesses a dangerous state known as Berserker Rage, which is triggered by an overwhelming anger that drives him to lash out uncontrollably. In this frenzied state, he becomes an unstoppable killing machine, slashing through enemies without hesitation. However, the downside is that Wolverine loses all sense of control and may even harm his allies, unable to recognize them in the midst of his rage, which I certainly relate to. This internal struggle has plagued Logan since childhood and often leads him to distance himself from others, fearing what he might do, but despite the risks, there are moments when the Berserker Rage proves necessary, particularly in his relentless battles against Sabretooth. The movie franchise also showcases this aspect of Wolverine, with a memorable scene in X2, the best X-Men movie, where he unleashes this fury, slashing through adversaries within the confines of the X-Mansion. But again, you all remember that scene, it's the best X-Men movie. Please flash sarcasm on the screen because they won't know I'm joking. In its 7, Night Vision. The comic combination of Wolverine's claws and super healing already gives him a formidable set of powers. Okay, the healing factor alone ensures that any wound is swiftly healed, including those caused by his claws, making him truly lethal. And alongside these regenerative capabilities that literally brought him back from a drop of blood, Logan possesses heightened senses like the super hearing, the smelling, and the ability to see in the dark. Although this power is often overlooked by some comic writers, it provides him with a distinct advantage in various situations. Wolverine has had an array of powers that has changed and evolved over the years, making him increasingly more powerful, but what initially began as a mutant with enhanced durability and claws developed into a character that is basically a, dare I say, Wolverine. Haha, get it? Yeah. He's constantly aware of his surroundings no matter what environment he's in because of this night vision, and his tendency to eliminate enemies before they actually pose like a genuine threat makes him exceedingly more formidable than normal. And this explains how he's able to do that, because you know, he can see in the dark. And it's Six Swordsman. In the 1990s comic storyline Fatal Attraction, Magneto forcibly removes the adamantium from Wolverine's body, leaving him without his signature claws. In this adamantiumless period, Wolverine carried a katana given to him by the Yoshida clan for added protection. One notable use of this katana was when he ended up beheading Bloodscream. Yeah. Oh boy. Later on, Wolverine acquired the Muramasa Blade, a sword with mythical properties capable of neutralizing a mutant's healing abilities, which is the unique blade that became his weapon of choice in certain situations, allowing him to confront and defeat formidable adversaries such as Omega Red and Sabretooth. And as it was the only weapon capable of truly ending Wolverine, therefore also able to end Omega Red and Sabretooth. But yeah, he's skilled with a sword, which you wouldn't really expect because, you know, he has the claws, but also makes sense because the claws are just basically tiny swords. Halfway through into number 5, Wisdom. Logan's journey as a superhero spans across significant historical events. Okay, he served in both World War I and World War II. He even fought alongside Captain America, and following these wars he found himself in Japan where he formed a family only to tragically lose them, and these devastating losses combined with centuries of heartbreak contribute to Logan's bitter and cynical demeanor. But after going through the adamantium bonding process, he befriended Alpha Fight, a Canadian superhero team, and became one of Canada's earliest superheroes. His initial task involved intervening in a conflict between Hulk and a Wendigo. However, his path took a turn when he was sent to eliminate Charles Xavier, but ended up being influenced by Xavier's telepathic abilities, leading him to join the X-Men. But still, okay, Wolverine's wealth of experiences and wisdom greatly influenced the X-Men's journey, and I mean, with an extended lifespan comes years to learn and become wiser, which he clearly has, so then it only continues on. So yeah, dude, damn, well done. Good for you. In at 4, Feral Form. The 90s marked a peculiar era in comic books characterized by excessive violence, extreme physical attributes, and objectification. But it was a time when unconventional ideas emerged, yielding both remarkable stories like Age of Apocalypse and disappointing ones like the Clone Saga. But surprisingly, Wolverine spent a significant portion of this decade without his adamantium skeleton. Despite losing the metal coating, he did retain his bone claws and healing factor, maintaining, like, you know, the classic Wolverine sort of aspect. However, the supervillain Genesis sought to actually restore Wolverine's adamantium, driven by a desire to serve the powerful Apocalypse. In a failed attempt though, Logan's body rejected the procedure and triggered a dormant mutation. Stripped of adamantium, Wolverine underwent a primal transformation, adopting an animalistic mentality while his nails grew into natural claws. It showcased the profound impact that the absence of adamantium had on Wolverine's body, and he just kind of became a beast, ironically enough. So yeah, he kind of needs the adamantium nowadays, otherwise it kind of goes back. Getting close to the end in number 3, Super Dad. On Earth 982, Rena was the new girl at high school, where some of the more popular girls tried to make her life miserable, stating that she was the daughter of an immigrant and an unemployed biker and all that. But when her dad, Logan, picked her up from school on his bike, everyone's opinion changed, especially when they learned that her mother, Elektra, was a wealthy martial arts expert. Yeah, it's crazy what fear can do. However, life at high school wasn't just about dealing with, like, the crowd and, you know, normal high school things, because, you know, it's a comic book high school. So, as Wild Thing, Rena had to save a classmate from a high-speed kidnapper, defeat a computerized assassin, stop a demonic invader, and even fight one of her teachers when he was turned into a Prime Sentinel. But that's just high school. But the fact that he can just pull up to her for school and then everyone stops making fun of his kid, that's a superpower, okay? And I wish my dad had that superpower. Although I probably wouldn't be as funny as I think I am if that had been the case. But ultimately, in number 2, time travel. When translating comic book superheroes to the big screen, screenwriters have to take creative liberties to adapt the material effectively, okay? What happens in comics can't necessarily work on screen. For example, Thanos' infatuation with Lady Death, which was a significant aspect of his character in the comics, was omitted for Infinity War and Endgame, allowing for a more focused portrayal of him. Similarly, the X-Men's colorful costumes were deemed impractical for the early films, leading to more black latex that ironically have aged poorly compared to their comic counterparts. But when the classic Days of Future Past storyline was adapted in the movie of the same name, significant alterations were made. In the comics, Kitty Pryde was the central character sent to the past to save the future, but in the movie, Wolverine took on that role. The film introduced the concept of Kitty Pryde's ability to send someone's consciousness back in time, with the caveat that it damages the mind. Due to his regenerative healing factor though, Wolverine became the only valid candidate to actually go through time that far back and ensure everyone's survival. And then finally, in at number 1, the Phoenix Force. I mean, like, okay, this is kind of a cop-out, but like, it still happened, okay? It was originally believed that the Phoenix Force was just simply an alternate personality of Jean Grey, or well, I guess the Phoenix was, just emerging when she acquired immense power. However, after Jean's tragic demise in the Dark Phoenix saga, it was retconned that the Phoenix was in fact a cosmic entity, and the Phoenix Force had a knack for possessing individuals, with Jean Grey being its favored host. Over the years though, it has possessed numerous mutants. Rachel Grey, Jean's daughter from an alternate future, Cyclops, Emma Frost, Colossus, Magic, and Namor were all possessed by the Phoenix Force at some point, and simultaneously, in fact, forming the group known as the Phoenix Five, because you know, you couldn't have one more, otherwise they would be competing with the Sinister Six, and you couldn't have one less, otherwise it would be like the Fantastic Four. You know, there's a lot of numbers that you gotta work with. But yeah, Wolverine has also had it, okay? So there you go. He's had that, and he has all those powers, or at least he has. And you know what, if you wanna get mad at me for including this, that's fine. It's just engagement. Comment on the video and tell me how much you hate my guts. Thanks for watching.